Well, we knew this coaching search could be a wild, wacky, crazy ride, something like a chess match in a tornado, as the new Vegas odds out yesterday no longer have Jon Gruden as the number 2 dude. Instead, he's being replaced by a man that we all are familiar with.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms and visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at All Day O State. Today, we're partially brought to you by Mazda. Like some of our players that sweat every detail, so does Mazda. Because when you make every moment count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward moment by Mazda, where you can move and be moved. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the coach search heats up. The new Vegas odds are out. Jon Gruden is no longer the number 2 dude. And traditionally speaking, that typically means that's because some of the people in one of the camps, whether it be Oklahoma State or Jon Gruden's camp, have told some of the Vegas insiders that Jon Gruden is off the board. Whether that was an us decision or him decision, who knows? But if the line moves that significantly, it probably means Jon Gruden is no longer really an option. So who was likely, if that were to take place, be his offensive coordinator in the ideal scenario? Zack Robinson. And yes, we've discussed previously how the prodigal son needs to return home because it makes the most amount of sense. At that time, when we had that last conversation, the Falcons had the number 4 offense in the country, and they were like number 7 in passing yards, and Michael Penix was looking like a competent quarterback. But since then, the jury's been a little bit out in Atlanta for Zack Robinson. If you look at message boards and things of that nature, they're not a big fan of what's currently transpiring in Atlanta. They're saying that his offense is unimaginative. It's not innovative enough. It's very predictable. It's very bland. He obviously has covered that. And I will admit, whenever he gave his statement about it, it was eerily reminiscent to some of the things Mike Gundy says. Basically, he was saying, no, I don't think it was overly complicated. If anything, I think we need to work on simplicity of the offense. And perhaps instead of not doing enough like people are accusing me of, I think we were potentially doing too much, which is precisely what we heard out of Mike Gundy after the Oregon game. So that verbiage, timing-wise, was a little suspect. But other than the fact that Michael Penix may be not developing quite the way that people assume that he would, Zack Robinson does have a phenomenal track record of developing quarterbacks. One of my favorite stories is the Baker Mayfield one, where he picks him up in the airport, teaches him the offense basically on the car ride there. They get to the stadium, and sure enough, Baker has to play, and he goes in and wins the ball game. And he accredited all that to Zack Robinson and his ability to condense the information, but also make it extremely applicable. So when you physically get on the field, you can make it tangible. He's been able to do that a significant amount. He has NFL experience. Naturally, he was the Cowboy quarterback that helped Mike Gundy in the beginning of the ascension of Cowboy football. He was able to throw to some of the greatest dudes that have ever come through Oklahoma State. We haven't had a Brandon Pettigrew level tight end since Brandon Pettigrew. We've had multiple Des Bryant level wide receivers, but Des Bryant is already saying, bring Zack Robinson home. GJ Kinne is still currently the number 1 Vegas odds, but right behind him now is Zack Robinson. So if we were to add some just random conjecture to this whole thing, perhaps there was an idea that Jon Gruden could be the head coach, Zack Robinson could be the offensive coordinator, and maybe Jon Gruden said, I do want to coach in college, but I really want to be in the SEC, as people have been discussing. And if that's the case, perhaps that is what elevated Zack Robinson back to the top of this conversation. Ironically enough, we had discussed in the summer that Zack Robinson seemed to be the next guy in line, and there might have even been some conversations about him being the offensive coordinator and head coach in waiting during all that Board of Regents fiasco. And now we've come to find out that that was actually pretty accurate, that Zack Robinson was the guy. As of 5 p.m. of the deadline day, he was going to be the dude that replaced Mike Gundy. Now we're hearing his name kind of pop back up again. And there are some reservations in Oklahoma State country based off of what you're hearing in Atlanta and what they're saying about the development of Penix at the moment. But there's also a lot of bright sides. The bright sides are he understands the game to a ridiculous level, not only from the college experience, the NFL experience, sitting behind some of the best in the game. He's learned so much that he's been able to be a competent offensive coordinator that was rumored to be a head coach in the NFL in the next few years or so if he continued at the trajectory he was at coming into the season. Things have kind of fizzled out a little bit, but I don't think that we should question whether he has the ability. I don't think we should be able to question whether he's going to have the access to engage with players on a different level. When you see some young guys like Kenny Dillingham and GJ Kinne and John Summerall make these connections with these players and then kind of rise up through the program with them, it does add so much. One of the biggest benefits to Zack Robinson is much like Mike Gundy. If he were to get the job and he were to be successful, he would likely be a guy that would be here for 20 years. Additionally, on top of his acumen with the quarterback and his ability to diagnose offensively what needs to be done, he can add some fun wrinkles because he was part of an offense in Stillwater that had a bunch of fun wrinkles. Back when Mike Gundy's offenses schematically had to be creative enough to overcome the mismatches physically that we had. Zack Robinson can do all that. And here's the biggest crescendo. He's going to be able to bring in the Des Bryants and the Ben Pettigrews and the Russell Okungs and the Kendall Hunters of the world to be beneficiaries of the recruiting trail for Oklahoma State. Right? We see heavy hitters from other Power 4 programs that have some of their Blitnikoff Award winners or Doak Walker Award winners or Heisman winners out there publicly on social media and in interviews trying to recruit guys to their schools. We unfortunately don't get a whole lot of that. We don't see the Jalen Warrens and the Chuba Hubbards and the Justice Hills of the world out here tweeting at recruits like, hey, you need to go to Stillwater, Oklahoma. Hey, you need to go check out Boone Pickens Stadium. Hey, you need to become a Cowboy. If Zack Robinson were to be the head man, all of that stuff would finally come to fruition. And yes, Kenyatta Wright mentioned on our X Space with Jason the other day that they do have some James Washington level dudes that do come back and they are involved. But at the same point in time, the public display of the positive messaging for Oklahoma State doesn't exist to the level that we need it to do. Zack Robinson, if he were to have given this job in the offseason during the Gundy Board of Regents fiasco, then there was already some stuff kind of leaking out that he was going to be able to assemble a recruiting staff that would be able to hit the trail for him. So even if he was still doing some NFL stuff, even if it was going to be a couple extra months, he could send guys like Des Bryant out on the recruiting trail on his behalf. That would be remarkable for Oklahoma State. It would add an instantaneous level of credibility, maybe not quite to the same level as Jon Gruden, but for Cowboy country, we would feel comfortable knowing that we got a former Oklahoma State player who learned under Mike Gundy back when Mike Gundy did have an innovative offense, plus all of his time in the NFL, plus all of his time as a quarterback coach and a quality control coach and an offensive coordinator. This is a great hire, and it's a big enough name that it will spark a ton of interest. It's a big enough name that is going to entice a lot of players to come at least take recruiting trips to Oklahoma State. Because Mike Gundy's mentioned previously, if we can get them in the building, we feel pretty good about our chances because Stillwater, Oklahoma is not viewed as a destination place. Therefore, a lot of the recruits around the country that don't know much about Stillwater, Oklahoma, they have no idea that Boone Pickens Stadium, Gallagher-Iba Arena, O'Brate Stadium, they're like the Taj Mahals for this part of the country. And we've heard it before from recruits, from players. The OU facilities, they're not the same as Oklahoma State's. Oklahoma State's facilities still are the upper end of the country. They're at the top of the Big 12. I think obviously you can see what Texas Tech was able to do recently, and that's very reminiscent of what we went through with Boone Pickens. And we just had another $40-50 million renovation like last year. And then a couple of years ago, we added some seats and we made the seats a little bit easier for leg room. So we've done some things in the facilities to continue to be what we were always labeled as for 15 years, which is the Oregon of the Midwestern South region. We still are that school. We still are that team. We still have those abilities. And Zack Robinson, even though things might be a little tricky right now in Atlanta, has proven time and time again that he can do things at a ridiculous level, which we 100% need. We need that national media attention that he can provide. We need that national reach when it comes to recruiting, which he can help not only provide, but he can provide people out on the recruiting trail that will finally start to tweet out like Adrian Peterson does for OU running backs. We need that. And Zack Robinson would bring that. It would bring the street cred, as the kids say. It would bring the recruiting. It would bring the donors. It would bring the NIL, which would raise the budget. And it would bring a remarkable staff. It could be a mixture of college dude staff and NFL dude staff. He's been doing this long enough to build tons of bridges and have a ridiculous amount of relationships for all of us to be excited that if he were to be named the head coach at Oklahoma State, not only could we take solace in the fact that he would be a loyal and true Cowboy to the end of time, but just because he's having a little bit of a down tick right now in Atlanta doesn't magically all of a sudden mean he's not the same quarterback coach and offensive coordinator that got him to the level that he's at now. If he was being talked about as a potential NFL head coach at the beginning of this season, then it's not like he completely forgot how to coach. It'll be interesting to see how the Falcons, operate throughout the course of the season now that their backs against the wall. This is really the first adversity that Zack Robinson's had to face in the NFL. So all eyes will be on Zack and how he handles it. But the timing, it's not that big of a deal because even if he does have a prior obligation to finish out his particular season, if he gets the job, he's on the horn. He's calling the Des Bryants, Brennan Pettigrews, the Kennel Hunters. He's getting in their ear immediately like, hey, man, I've got a few more months left here. Could you do me a favor? Could you go start recruiting the Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas area because you carry a massive amount of weight? This is an exciting time for Oklahoma State fans if this were to become the next head man. It's time for you to move and be moved, which means that Mazda is going to help you do just that. In today's Mazda moving the game forward moment, we have much to discuss. And for those who believe that it's not just about playing the game, but it's also about redefining it, there are moments that do more than just simply put points up on the board. They move crowds, they move cultures, and they keep the game moving forward. Whenever you're looking at Oklahoma State coming into this Baylor matchup, this is an opportunity for Oklahoma State to rally for Mike Gundy behind Doug Meacham and do something that will not only put themselves in a better position moving forward, but shock the Big 12 country up. Do we have a lot of positioning to win the conference? No. Do we have the positioning right now if we can capitalize on this energy, this momentum, this frustration, this anger, angst, hurt, call it what you want to call it. We can combine all of it and make something magical happen just like you can with a Mazda. You have to see when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is then only the beginning. And it's just like when there's, every highlight with more to be discovered. Mazda is a highlight in and of itself that leaves you more and more to discover. So make sure that you go check out Mazda today so you can move and be moved by a Mazda. All right, now we get to jump into this next segment here. So we've kind of heard Carson Cunningham did a show the other night that I implore you guys to check out. We've got a lot of orange injections, Kool-Aid, hype trains, call it what you need to call it, happening out here in the podcasting and YouTube world on behalf of Oklahoma State. We need to get more orange out there as physically possible, so make sure that you guys go check out the Reload and Daily and Carson and Oklahoma's Own. We got a lot of great stuff going on. But as it pertains to this particular roster, traditionally speaking, you're going to lose a considerable amount of your roster whenever something like this transpires, and you have to get rid of the head coach. Again, we look at what's going on at UCLA. But they all have one more game that will not count against them if they were to redshirt and transfer, and that game is against Baylor. So there's inevitably going to be some individuals on that roster that are ready to explore what the portal could potentially look like for them. Just like there's going to be some players on this roster that want to fight, scratch, cut, bleed, do whatever necessary just to get a little bit of playing time, just to get the ability to put something on film. So you're going to have a portion of these dudes that are putting something on film for their next spot. You're also going to have a portion of these dudes that are wanting to put something on the field so they can stay at this spot. regardless of what the reasoning is for you to get out there and bust your ever-loving tail to put some stuff on film, maybe this is a good time for it. However, the concern there would be you're going to have guys that maybe it's designed for a defensive end or something to that effect to go through the B gap, right? And spacing for the other positions, the defensive linemen, the linebackers, need you to go through that gap so they can have the ability to maybe get outside, have contained, so on and so forth. But sometimes, and you've been seeing it this season, there's guys that just decide, I'm not going to go through the B gap, even though I'm supposed to. I think I can make this play, so I'm going to actually try to cut it off here and get to the outside and get myself a sack. That is what we cannot have. And that is the biggest fear coming into this ball game. Again, they're going to play more inspired. Some will be mad. Some will be, excited about the potential prospects of what their future could be. Regardless of what your emotional investment level is and why you're going out there to do the daggone thing, not only go do it, but go show that you can do it in a team setting. Because more often than not, when you're about to enter the transfer portal, number one, it's kind of hard. It's not impossible, but it is more difficult to have attractions when you're a 1-9, 2-8 kind of ball club. Even after that, though, they're going to pay attention to what the play call was, most likely, what it was supposed to be, based on what the alignment, formation, etc. is. And so other coaches at another university that are possibly looking at you to be in the transfer portal, if your statistics and your on-field play responsibilities don't line up, it's going to make life even more difficult. So sure, we want players to play inspired in this ballgame against Baylor and run around with their hair on fire. We want that. We want a bunch of Trey Ruckers. We want a bunch of Parker Robertsons out there just doing everything they physically possibly can to shake this thing up, get a W against the Baylor Bears, get a little bit of retribution for what happened in 2021. But at the same time, it is concerning that we could have some dudes like seemingly has already been happening that decide, nah, I don't want to go where the play's supposed to go because I think I can make this play here anyways. And here's the deal. If you're a Nick Martin or Malcolm Rodriguez, you could make those decisions. You could take those risks because more often than not, when you took the risk, you were going to make the play. That's the problem we're having. We're having dudes that are wanting to take risks unnecessarily that aren't necessarily even part of the play design, but they're also taking the risk and not getting the job done. That's the problem. If you're good enough to see something different than what the play call is supposed to be, and you know you can do it, and you know you can get there, there's not a coach in the country that will tell you you shouldn't have done that. But if you're not good enough, you're not fast enough, or you're not big enough, or you're not strong enough, what are we doing? And I'm not saying that we have dudes that aren't big, strong, fast enough to accomplish some of those things, but talent is probably not a factor. Individually, we know Brian McCoy's good. And Brian McCoy seems to be a leader of the linebacker room that is not one of those individuals that's trying to do a little bit too much at times. But outside of him, Wendell Gregory. Wendell Gregory is a power four starting pseudo defensive and linebacker, whatever the case may be, anywhere in the country. But we have to see that the gap sound responsibility is something that we're paying attention to. Because if you're going to be stunting and twisting and things of that nature, if you're trying to get to a pulling guard, pulling tackle to complicate him getting to the second level, the spatial awareness, even defensively, is very, very important. So yes, this is a game where you just need to pin your ears back and go have fun. But go have fun in context of a team setting. Because the individual efforts, I know words are still hard for me, they haven't been getting it done. It's okay to just call it like it is. If you're going to take some risks that aren't built into your responsibility on that particular play, you sure as all get out better get there. You absolutely better get to your objective, whether it be a sack or a TFL or tracking somebody down before they get to the sticks. If you are going to abandon your original responsibility, make sure that you're good enough to get there. If not, play team-oriented football. Do what the team did the season that we played Texas in the Big 12 title game, which was all the defensive linemen did was eat up space to allow Nick Martin to go get 140 tackles. We can do that. Either we're just getting pushed around too much or we're trying to take too many individual unnecessary risks. And we're going to have to take risks anyway in this ballgame. We're going to have to get somewhat creative offensively, maybe even somewhat creative defensively to pull this thing out. So the last thing we need, if we're going to already know that we're taking risks and putting ourselves in a position to get burnt every now and again, then play the team-oriented system that helps you get to the right spot, the right space, the right gap, the right hole, without taking the unnecessary risk. We have not played team football one time this year at all. Maybe this is a galvanization moment for this locker room to say, you know what? We have underperformed. We haven't bought in like we're supposed to. We haven't ingratiated ourselves with Cowboy culture and what it truly means. So now that the head man is gone and every single coach on that roster is now coaching for their next job, no matter where it is, here or elsewhere, and every single player is also playing for their next job. Let's face it, these guys are employees. They know that. And what happens when the CEO gets fired? Almost everybody can get fired because new people are going to come in, new owners are going to come in, they're going to bring in their people, they're going to want to get rid of the individuals that don't bring a whole lot of value. So if this is the moment that we can capitalize on, it's got to be based off of team-oriented football, in my opinion. FanDuel is the bee's knees for all of your betting needs, but of course, you already knew that, which is why we're actually going to switch it up and say DoorDash is where you need to get squared away. Have a streak coming directly to you this upcoming Saturday. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. And just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every single time you order is beneficial. These players deliver when it matters the most. So let's break it down. For Locked On Oklahoma State fans, we've talked about Josh Ford. We've talked about Brian McCoy. Let's go ahead and talk about Cam Smith, because one thing you didn't see a whole lot of against Tulsa is Cam Smith getting burnt, or a bunch of dudes getting burnt deep. So the back end of the secondary and the leadership of Cam Smith seemingly showed up in the passing department against the Tulsa Golden Hurricane. He was able to come through when we absolutely did need him most, because the last thing we could afford was them taking the top off the defense. So if you've been watching week to week, his performances do validate why he was the starting dude coming into the season over guys like J.K. Johnson or even Jalen Davies. Whenever you look at what Cam Smith's been able to accomplish, it's easy to see that he can be on a streak just like you. So make sure that when you see Cam Smith delivering for the Cowboys, you have DoorDash deliver for you on Saturday. With DoorDash Streaks, you can save every Saturday on your order, stack it all up in the season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. And make sure that you have the best in the industry when it comes to delivery through November 18th, directly to your doorstep on Saturdays. Here we go. Okay, so now we'll have some fun with 5-hour energy. You got to have the energy to boost yourself through the day. Sometimes whenever you're watching Cowboy football as well, you definitely need a little bit of extra energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each individual 2-shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus the B vitamins and nutrients with zero sugar equal zero crashes. What I love the most is how portable they are. I can take them anywhere. With big taste and a tiny shot, it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, you can get the boost that you need. When you reach for a 5-hour energy shot, you got to get that exhilarating feeling that it gives you. Honestly, you're going to love how fast it kicks in and that it is, in fact, sugar-free, so you don't have to worry about that crazy crash later on with some other brands. Enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. And it's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love, or go ahead and be bold and try something new. in-store or online at www.5hourenergy.com, or you can head on over to Amazon today to get your 5-Hour Energy shots. Last but not least, the keys to victory, pretty simplistic. Not a lot is changed, but the biggest key to victory for me is give some offensive wrinkles. If Meacham says that there's too much commonality with what he used to do at TCU with some of the individuals currently on the Baylor staff, they know what he likes to run, historically speaking. Okay, cool. Then you need to personnel shake it up a bit. So I would like to see some diamond formation stuff. I would like to see a little bit of wildcat action. I'd like to see a little bit of trickeration in the backfield. Give them some eye candy to make things difficult. On top of that, number 2, just play inspired team football, which we haven't done this season. That's what I want to see, how this team responds. I want to see how this team plays together. If they're able to rally around each other to kind of reconnect with that Cowboy culture, stop worrying about NIL and all this other ridiculous stuff, save the season, make it respectable. Because if you do want to transfer and you play for a 2-8 ball club, it's going to be pretty daggone difficult. But if you want to transfer and you're playing for a 500 ball club or even a 4-8 ball club, and you statistically have the proof that you did some stuff and you schematically show that you could be a team player along the way, you're probably going to set yourself up a little bit better in the future. Lastly, establish a run game. Baylor has difficulty in the run game. Now, they were better against Arizona State, but before that, I could have rushed for 30 yards against the Baylor defense on a handful of carries, okay? We should be able to do the same. And now that we've heard from Doug Meacham that Rodney Fields is healthy again, he's ready to rock and roll again, we're going to need to see that on the field. Caleb Hicks, he showed flashes of brilliance, but he's also showed moments where he was hesitant to hit the hole or find the cutback lane. Trent Allen was basically the shining light. The only dude who provided a spark against Oregon had a little ankle injury, and unfortunately, we didn't get to see him in any capacity whatsoever against Tulsa. Instead, we did see Freddie Brock. And you know what? I'm just going to leave that be. I think all of us have eyeballs. But if Rodney Fields is healthy and Trent Allen is healthy and Caleb Hicks is healthy, we should have the ability to run the football, because that is the Achilles heel of Baylor. We haven't been able to pass the ball. We haven't been able to run the ball. We haven't been able to move the ball down the field. If Baylor has a susceptibility, it's going to be their rush defense. We need to find different ways, creativity-wise, to take advantage of that. If the Cowboys can control some portion of the clock by matriculating the ball down the field, the run game is going to be imperative to having that kind of success. If Oklahoma State cannot run the ball whatsoever against Baylor, it's going to be a long day, because Baylor has so many crazy weapons offensively, like Josh Cameron and Michael Trigg. And I think that Washington in the backfield is a problem. So Robertson's got a cannon. He can also run a little bit. So if you don't get contained, it could be problematic. And we have not been very good at containing this season either. So there's a lot of things that indicate Oklahoma State's going to lose. There's a lot of things that say that the betting line of almost 21 might actually be factual and accurate and legitimate. And I've questioned some odds this year. I'm not going to do that anymore. All I'm going to do is hope that we play inspired ball, we find a way to rush, and we find a way to have some creativity offensively in the backfield to help Zane finally get in some semblance of a rhythm. If we can do those 3 things, we can, in fact, get this thing done. Baylor fans are sweating a little bit because of the inspirational added factor that sometimes come with a head coach being fired. So I think we can shake things up. We also could get our doors absolutely blown off. And for everybody out here, I got a special extra episode. The next episode, I get to have my alumni head coach on the program to talk about coaching search and some of the things that you could potentially overcome whenever you do have a returning roster of almost 20 starters. When you have over 85% of your roster returning, how do you battle complacency? How do you prevent an absolutely catastrophic situation from occurring? And my friends, University Falcons, are legitimately, all right, they could make a run at a natty. All righty, y'all. So we're going to have for this one. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Hit the like, share, comment, subscribe. My podcast for people out there. Do what you do.